Good Tuesday morning of the 34th week of the year, the last week in ordinary time, okay? This one, again, I take it personally. And anybody who's my age has got to remember some of this. I'll tell you what I mean in a second when I read it to you. You had to grow up in the 50s. Old enough in the 50s, okay? Old enough to appreciate what the text is saying here and how during the 50s we honestly read that we were coming to the end of time. Maybe it was just in New Haven with the Italian kids. Oh, no, it wasn't actually. But I love to laugh at my own. Anyway, it says, while some people were some people were speaking about how the temple was adorned with costly stones and votive offerings, Jesus said, all that you see here, the days will come when there will not be left a stone upon a stone that will not be thrown down. Then they asked him, Teacher, when will this happen? What sign will there be when these things are about to happen? He answers, see that you do not be deceived. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time has come. Don't follow them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, don't be afraid. Don't be terrified. For such things must happen first, but it will not immediately be the end. Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdoms against kingdom. There'll be powerful earthquakes, famines, plagues from place to place, and awesome sights and mighty signs will come from the sky. That could be could be the description of the 20th century. Even the mighty signs will come from the sky, a nuclear blast, you see. No. Christ uses apocalyptic language here. We took these texts literally at the time. I'm thinking of the 50s. Do you remember this? There was some kind of a divine Marian apparition of Blessed Mother. I think it was that, or it was maybe it was the children at Fatima. Somebody predicted the end of the world in 1960. Do you remember that? You have to be kids for that, but do you remember that? We took it really seriously. I was sure the end of the world was going to be in 1960. And given the Second World War, which was only 15 years before, even 10 if you figure this was in the mid-50s when we were thinking about these things, it was catastrophic, and it wasn't hard to take this literally, given that you could actually say it was an apocalyptic century. When had the entire world gone to war? 80 million people were killed in the Second World War, I think, something like that. Horrendous. The nuclear weapons, the two of them over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, talk about an apocalyptic age. Whole nations collapsed. And you could almost say it was the end. What one of the popes said, this is the end of Europe, meaning the first half of the 20th century. The First World War was the end of Europe. I forgot what pope it was. I think it was Pius XI. My God, he had it right. It's the end of Europe. We have seen the apocalypse, okay? In that sense, it seems like it. But the reality is that what the apocalypse is? I think when I read these texts, I see the story of the human soul. Not, in a sense, history. Maybe the end of the world's coming, I don't know. But I don't even care. What I care about is the apocalyptic moments in life when you get to choose Christ or you reject him. When you get to choose. And if you choose with him, you have life. If not, the isolation of death. And in that sense, that's a real apocalypse, in my opinion. It's not whether there'll be flashes in the sky and there'll be, the Martians, crazy. Well, we were kids. We created a lot of this stuff in our own mind, but we had the advantage of the imagery of the Second World War to go by. But the reality is, the apocalypse is the story of the soul. Christ comes to us in the events of our lives. Do we choose him, or do we ignore him, or reject him? That's the apocalypse for our souls, for ourselves. Do we accept Christ? Do we ignore him? Or do we reject him? You see? Because how we respond to Christ in the depths of our hearts defines whether we are choosing life or death. Now, eternity with or in the absence of God. With God or in the absence of God. By our choice. By our choice. So I take the apocalypse is the moments of grace. Do you accept grace or do you reject it? In the course of one's life. Do you choose to be faithful to your spouse at a given moment? Or do you choose infidelity in the sense of inaction? When you have a chance to be kind and you choose to be indifferent. You see? That's an apocalyptic moment. You have a grace moment. Did you choose life? Did you choose love? Or did you ignore it, let alone reject it? So you don't need the end of the world. You don't need the atomic bomb. All you need is your spouse and your children and your friends and the events of your life. That's all you need. Well, because that's the moment of grace, the moment whether you either choose life or not. See? I think of life as a great story. It's a great adventure in which God is present in every moment. In a given moment, where our vocations in life, our positions in life, offer us opportunities of grace. Do we love well or not? And I think when the end of time, when God confronts us at our death, or we confront God in our death, I think he's going to ask you, what did you do with the life I gave you? What did you do with the people in your life that I gave you? What did you do with given the moments of grace when you could have loved better, more generously? You could have turned off the TV and listened to your son and daughter. No, not half-heartedly, but patiently and passionately listen. When you want to know it, that little second grader is telling you about his day with that mean old teacher. You see, get it? Did you listen? Or did you diss it off? You get it? Did you watch Johnny Carson more than hearing your wife's plea for attention or your husband's plea for attention? You see? That's the question. I really see it that way. I see life that way. I see every moment of life as apocalyptic in the sense, grace moment which you choose or you don't choose, the grace of Christ as it's present to you, not in some glamorous way, but in the everydayness of life. That I hear, that I do what life requires of me in a given moment, what love requires for me in a given moment. Sometimes it is massively heroic, but oftentimes it is not. It's every day. It's every day when we choose. Every day when we choose how to be with whom we are, with whom to be in our love for each other. How do we be present, as I'm trying to say that? Just to be physically in the same room? It could be as empty as hell. Or attentive, sensitive, trying to be present, Hear the silent cry of the poor. The poor is whom? Your spouse, your children, your parents, the lonely in your life, a cousin, a friend. I can't say who it is. It could be anybody. But it's a moment of grace. It's a moment when you choose whether you will listen or not, respond or not. It could be at work, it could be anything. I don't know what it would be. But you do, because they're going to look at your life and say, these are things as they occur. No, I don't know how to describe it. I only know my own life. How important it is for me to be hearing, not just talking, seeing and not just looking at, and seeing the tears and responding to the tears. How often we look at those who are crying and don't see, but sometimes we do see, and in seeing, we love, and nothing is the same. I love that line in Barbra Streisand. He touched me, and nothing is the same. That's a grace moment. Maybe that's better put. Christ touches us in a given moment, and nothing is the same.